here's the wolf trail right here. They followed this bank and went down. They're really cunning, and this is where you got to be careful of your scent.
Personally, I think wolves are the top predators, top. He's such a smart animal.
In a world where convenience is just a tap away and city lights outshine the stars, there are still those who choose a radically different path, one that veers far away from society's fast pace, favoring solitude, survival, and self-reliance. For most, the idea of living days away from the nearest road or relying on a wood stove to stay warm in 60 below zero winters is unthinkable. But for Heimo and Edna Korth, this is not just a way of life. It's a philosophy, a quiet resistance against modernity. Their story isn't just about the Arctic wilderness or living off the grid. It's a deep exploration into the human spirit's capacity for resilience, love, and sorrow. You may know them from The Last Alaskans, but there's so much more beyond the TV screen. Their real-life journey is raw, tragic, beautiful, and often heartbreaking. Let's take a closer look at the untold truth behind Heimo and Edna Korth's extraordinary existence. Out there in the heart of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where the wind slices through layers of fur and metal like it's paper, Heimo and Edna Korth live a life few can truly comprehend. This isn't some off-grid fantasy for a long weekend. This is survival in its most unforgiving form, carried out year after year. A brutal harmony between human determination and nature's indifference. Heimo's journey didn't begin in the wilderness. Born in Wisconsin, he grew up in a world of convenience and order. Stoplights, paved roads, grocery stores. But something inside him stirred. A quiet rebellion, not for fame or adrenaline, but for authenticity. That quiet voice became a roar he could no longer ignore. He left behind everything familiar and headed north. Far north. Not for a challenge, but for a different kind of peace. One built not by silence, but by purpose. Edna, on the other hand, never needed to seek out the wild. It was already part of her. Born into a Siberian Yupik family on St. Lawrence Island, she was raised knowing how to harvest from the land, how to endure, how to live, not just survive, in one of the most unforgiving climates on Earth. When she and Heimo met, it wasn't just a relationship. It was a meeting of mindsets, skills, and a shared vision for a life that defied modern expectation. Together, they carved out something extraordinary. Their home is a series of cabins scattered along the Colleen River. Legally, they're the last of their kind in this stretch of the Arctic refuge. Their presence grandfathered in before the government halted permanent habitation. They don't live in one place all year. They migrate with the seasons, canoeing, snowmobiling, walking, whatever it takes to keep up with the natural cycles of food, shelter, and warmth. Their lifestyle is like a dance with the wild, and missing a step can be fatal. This isn't a lifestyle where you can take a break or call for pizza delivery. There's no backup generator, no nearby hospital, and no helpful neighbor to lend a hand. A broken trap, a missed hunting window, or a miscalculation in food storage could turn from inconvenience to tragedy in a heartbeat. They've faced dangers from wolves and grizzlies, but their greatest threats are often the silent ones: cold, isolation, and human error. and they know loss all too well. Their daughter, Colleen, named after the river they call home, died in a tragic accident. The wilderness that gives them life also takes it away, sometimes without warning or mercy. Yet, Heimo and Edna stayed. They didn't retreat. They endured. They honored their daughter not with tears, but with tenacity. They built stronger shelters, hunted harder, lived deeper. Their life is as raw as it gets, hauling water from contributions, checking traps in the pitch black of Arctic winter. But there's beauty in it too, the kind that doesn't translate well to screen or speech. It's in the flicker of firelight against hand-hewn logs, in the silence between distant wolf howls, in the way Edna crafts clothing from caribou hides, or the way Heimo meticulously lays out his gear before a multi-day hunt. Every action is deliberate. Every object has a purpose. Nothing is wasted, because out there, waste is a luxury they simply can't afford. They've appeared on TV, sure. The last Alaskans introduced their story to millions, but what you see on screen is just a sliver. Cameras can't capture the smell of wood smoke mixed with fresh snow, or the weight of knowing you've got 5 months of darkness ahead. It's not a performance, it's their life. And through it all, Heimo and Edna remain steady. No fame chasing, no online following. Just two people, deeply rooted in a world most wouldn't last a week in. But for them, it's not hardship, it's home. There's a particular silence in the Arctic that carries more than just cold. It holds memory, pain, and reverence. For Heimo and Edna Korth, that silence is heavier near one specific cabin, where a small grave rests under the snow each winter and is touched by summer sun only briefly. Their daughter, Colleen, lies there, forever 2 years old. It was supposed to be another routine day, another trip on the river they knew so well. But out in the wilderness, even familiarity offers no guarantees. The canoe capsized. The icy waters of the Colleen River, swift and unforgiving, pulled their little girl away before either parent could reach her. No emergency call, no search party, no hope of rescue. Just the roaring of water and the sudden, horrifying absence of a child's cry. The grief that followed didn't shatter them, but it changed them. Permanently. Out here, grief has no stage and no audience. There were no counselors, no support groups, and no headlines. Just two people trying to hold on to each other while the vast, indifferent wilderness reminded them that it gives nothing freely and takes without reason. Colleen's presence never left. Not really. Her name is etched into the land, into the seasons, into every cautious step they take now. They return to her grave each year, sometimes quietly clearing brush, other times just sitting for a while in silence. That loss, the kind that no words can soften, became part of their story, part of their survival. Not a weakness, not something they moved past, but something they carry. When The Last Alaskans first aired, most viewers had never seen anything quite like it. No background music pushing drama, no artificial tension, just Heimo, Edna, and the truth of their lives in the Arctic. There was something magnetic about the rawness, especially in Heimo. His blunt honesty, his dry humor, his clear love for Edna, it all came through without effort. But it wasn't just about hunting caribou or hauling firewood. The show captured moments of reflection, moments of quiet. Heimo is talking about Colleen. Edna sewing by candlelight, her hands methodical and calm. The realness of it resonated with people in a way no flashy survival series ever could. Because this wasn't a test run or a season-long challenge. It was their life. Every day, every choice, and every mistake could have real, permanent consequences. What stood out most was how unshakable their connection to the land was. For many, the Arctic seems like a place to conquer. But for the Korths, it's not something to beat. It's something to respect. They don't dominate nature. They move with it, adapt to it, and sometimes mourn with it. Their life isn't about escape. It's about meaning. Heimo once said that he doesn't live out there because it's easy. He lives there because, for him, it's the only place that feels real. The pain, the beauty, the solitude, it all strips away everything that isn't essential. And through the lens of the show, audiences began to see what that means. That freedom isn't about convenience. It's about truth. And truth, especially in the Arctic, can be harsh. But still, they stay. They fish, they hunt, they tell stories, they remember. And through it all, the memory of Colleen remains not as a chapter that ended, but as a presence that walks with them in the snow, that lingers in the mist rising from the river. Their tragedy didn't define their life, but it did deepen it. And that's what makes their story not just powerful, but unforgettable. There's a version of wilderness life people love to dream about. Quiet mornings by the fire, crisp air, and freedom from the modern world. But what the Final Frontiersmen reveals is far more complex, far more human. Written by James Campbell, a cousin of Heimo Korth, the book takes readers beyond the snowy landscapes and into the emotional core of what it really means to live cut off from civilization. Campbell didn't just interview Heimo, he lived alongside him, observing the slow grind of life in the Arctic. He saw the cracks, the scars, the exhaustion that settles deep in your bones when every ounce of comfort has to be earned. The pages of the book don't shy away from the darkness. It dives into the grief that never quite leaves after Colleen's death, the way Heimo blamed himself, and how Edna's steady presence kept them moving forward when the weight of that loss threatened to paralyze them both. The book goes deeper than any episode could. You learn how trust and routine become survival tools, how silence becomes communication, and how even the strongest relationships can fray under the pressure of relentless survival. Heimo is portrayed not as a legend or a hero, but as a man, flawed, emotional, and driven. And Edna, often soft-spoken on screen, comes through as the quiet force behind their entire way of life. The book doesn't glorify them, it respects them. For those who have ever been captivated by the idea of living off the land, The Final Frontiersmen is a necessary dose of truth. It shows that going off the grid isn't a retreat. It's a confrontation with everything you are, everything you fear, and everything you're willing to endure. Part of what makes their lifestyle so unique is how it's woven into the cycles of nature. The Korths don't claim a single static home. Their life moves like the seasons, shifting locations based on the needs of the moment. They operate out of 3 primary cabins, each one offering different advantages throughout the year. It's not just a matter of preference, it's about survival strategy. When summer arrives, they turn to the rivers. The fishing begins, the nets go out, and the preparations for winter start earlier than most could imagine. Grayling and whitefish are smoked and dried. Supplies are gathered, not from stores but from the land itself. There's always a sense of looking ahead, because winter in the Arctic isn't a season. It's an event you either prepare for or perish in. As autumn creeps in, they move closer to caribou migration paths. The hunt becomes central. Every shot counts. A single caribou can provide food for months, but it also means days of skinning, butchering, and preserving meat without any modern equipment. And the work doesn't stop when the snow begins to fall. It intensifies. Winter brings near constant darkness. The rivers freeze, snow buries the cabins, and the temperature can dip to 60 degrees or lower. But their cabins are ready. Wood piles stand taller than a man. Traps are checked, often in brutal conditions, with hands stiff from the cold and eyes always watching for signs of predators. The snowmobiles must run. The stoves must stay lit. There's no margin for error. The rhythm of this life is dictated by need, not by desire. Birthdays and holidays don't always land during times of celebration. They're often marked by chores, hunts, or storms. Every decision is guided by the land, every mistake measured in risk. And yet, they thrive in this rhythm, not because it's easy, but because it's real. For Heimo and Edna, this nomadic, self-reliant life isn't an act of rebellion or escapism. It's a deeply personal commitment to a way of being. Their story, in print and on screen, continues to captivate because it challenges everything modern life takes for granted. When the final episode of The Last Alaskans aired in 2019, it didn't feel like the end of a TV show. It felt like losing a window into a world most people could never fully access. The raw quiet of the Arctic, the long shots of Heimo chopping wood, Edna preparing fish by hand, and the frozen breath as they spoke into still air, it all lingered. But while the cameras packed up and the production team headed back to heated homes and concrete roads, Heimo and Edna didn't go anywhere. They stayed. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, with its isolation, danger, and brutal beauty, remains their home. Not just a place they live, but home. That word carries a different weight out there. It means self-reliance, constant vigilance, and a connection to the land that runs deeper than comfort or convenience. Long after viewers stopped tuning in, Heimo and Edna continued hauling wood, setting traps, and fishing through frozen lakes. Their life hasn't changed much. Only the world watching has moved on. Occasionally, they make trips to Fairbanks, the closest city where they can stock up on essentials they can't make, hunt or trade for: fuel, ammunition, salt, and maybe a few supplies for repairs. These trips are brief, purposeful, and never quite comfortable. Civilization doesn't fit them the way the wild does. It's noisy, too bright, too soft. They always return north. Heimo has made a few appearances since the cameras stopped rolling. Interviews, podcast cameos, and radio chats, where you can hear the crackle of fire in the background. But those are rare. Most of the time, their story continues in silence, just the way they prefer it. Fame was never part of the plan. Sharing their life with viewers was about honesty, not exposure. Their family, though physically spread out, remains close. Heimo and Edna have 3 daughters. Colleen, their youngest, is always with them in memory. Her grave still visited, her name still spoken. That loss, decades old now, never faded. It simply became part of the landscape, something they live with quietly. Rhonda and Kryn, their older daughters, chose different paths, not in rejection of the wilderness, but in search of balance. Kryn, especially, walked a compelling line between her upbringing and the modern world. A former Marine, she brings the same strength and discipline to her adult life that her parents showed in the Arctic. She's a mother now, and viewers saw her wrestle with the dual pull of tradition and practicality, how to honor where she comes from while building something new for her own family. She appeared on The Last Alaskans alongside her husband and child, sharing scenes that revealed just how deeply her roots run. The skills she learned from Edna, cleaning fish, maintaining a cabin, and braving the cold with calm resolve, didn't disappear. They evolved. Her life now may include vehicles and the internet, but the mindset remains the same. Respect for nature, patience in hard times, and a refusal to take easy shortcuts. That mindset is the true legacy Heimo and Edna passed on. It's not about rejecting modern life. It's about approaching the world with a certain humility, a deep awareness that comfort is earned, not assumed, that the land provides, but only if you meet it halfway. Their daughters might not live in the Arctic, but they carry those lessons everywhere they go. Even in their absence from screens, the Korths continue to inspire. Their story lingers not because of drama, but because of its purity. A man and a woman, choosing every single day to live on their own terms, accepting the risks, carrying the grief, and embracing the silence. The wilderness never stopped calling, and they never stopped answering. In a world that moves faster by the day, where lives are increasingly filtered through screens and measured by convenience, Heimo and Edna Korth remain a quiet, unwavering contrast. They represent more than just survival in the Arctic. They represent the possibility of choosing a different kind of life, one where meaning comes from effort, and fulfillment comes from necessity, not novelty. Their story echoes louder now than ever. While society leans into automation and distraction, they rely on instinct, grit, and a deep connection to the land. There's no endless scroll, no chase for likes, and no digital validation. Just 2 people, enduring and adapting with respect to every season, every storm, and every loss. Theirs is a life where every chore matters, every decision has weight, and nothing is wasted. Not time, not food, not energy. It's a life stripped down to its truest form. Some see only the hardship, the biting cold, the danger, and the solitude. But look closer, and what emerges is strength, not just physical, but emotional. Their bond, their resilience, their way of honoring both life and death with quiet purpose. This is what makes their story unforgettable. The wilderness didn't isolate them, it sharpened them. It made every joy earned, every memory sacred. But even stories like theirs are not immune to time. Federal policies now prevent new permanent residents from settling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And when Heimo and Edna are gone, their way of life may disappear with them. No one else will be legally allowed to carry on as they have. The final chapter of a self-reliant culture will close, not with drama, but with quiet inevitability. They are the last of their kind, living historians of a vanishing frontier. A reminder that once, people didn't just visit the wild. They belonged to it. And in a world that often feels detached from its roots, that reminder might be their most powerful legacy. Heimo and Edna Korth are more than characters on a TV show. They're symbols of something that's vanishing fast. Their life, though filled with tragedy, also speaks to triumph, resilience, and the unshakable power of human will. Whether you admire them, pity them, or simply find their way of life fascinating, one thing is clear: their story leaves an impact. If you found this story meaningful, hit that like button. It helps more people discover this content. Drop your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Have you read The Final Frontiersmen or watched The Last Alaskans? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into untold wilderness stories, off-grid legends, and forgotten American frontiers. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and never underestimate the strength of the human spirit.